On the outskirts of an old American industrial city, there is a street called Shadow Lane covered with old vines and weeds. At the end of the street stood a rundown bungalow. The house, due to its long and unfortunate history, is known to locals as the Ghost House. It is said that it was once a warm place for a happy family, but as time passed, it became a symbol of desolation and the nearby residents gave it a wide berth. High school student Jason, a young man who is passionate about adventure and paranormal phenomena, is full of curiosity about this house. He and his friends live in a nearby neighborhood just a few blocks away from the house. At night, Jason could often see the outline of the house from his bedroom window in the distance. The outline in the darkness seemed to be telling a silent, unknown secret. The history of the evil house dates back 50 years. At that time, it was home to a couple and their young son. On the surface, they are a typical American family, and their lives seem harmonious. But this harmony was soon shattered by the owner of the family's drug addiction. He lost his job at a local factory and the family relationship became strained, which eventually turned into domestic violence. During a violent quarrel, his son died and he was imprisoned, and his wife, unable to bear such great grief, chose to commit suicide. Since then, the house has become a local horror legend. It is said that there are often strange sounds and an uneasy atmosphere in the house. Even in daylight, it seemed dark and depressing. Sometimes, at night, someone would see a glimmer of light coming from the window, as if someone had lit a candle inside. But when they get closer to see what's going on, the light suddenly disappears, leaving only darkness. Over time, the surrounding neighbors also experienced a series of unfortunate events. Some people moved away, others fell into deep fear because they couldn't bear the oppressive atmosphere. There are few people walking on the streets, and even during the day, an oppressive silence can be felt. This street, especially around the evil spirit house, has become a forbidden area where no one dares to enter. Jason's curiosity about the house grew. He began to collect various rumors and stories about the evil spirit house and even tried to take photos of the house, but every time he got close there, he felt an unspeakable fear, as if there was something there. The house watched him silently. As summer approaches, Jason and his three friends Mike, Chris, and Tyler begin planning their summer adventures. These four high school students have different personalities, but they become friends because of their common curiosity and desire for the unknown. They often discuss stories about supernatural phenomena together, and the evil house naturally becomes the focus of their discussions. One night, after a night full of games and fun at the pub, they passed Shadow Lane on their way home. The silence of the street and the darkness around them were in stark contrast to the noise and light they had just seen. The lights on the street were sparse, and only the outline of the evil spirit house in the distance looked even more eerie in the faint moonlight. At this moment, Chris suddenly proposed a bold idea. How about we knock on the door of the evil spirit house? At first, everyone else was shocked by this proposal, but with the provocation and confrontation between them, now the idea is starting to look more and more tempting. Eventually, they agreed to accept the challenge, but each had varying degrees of fear and hesitation in their hearts. The four of them walked on the street leading to the evil spirit house, their footsteps echoing in the empty street. As they got closer, Jason began to feel an indescribable uneasiness. His heartbeat quickened and his palms began to sweat. The surrounding night and silence made every step stressful. When they arrived in front of the evil spirit house, everything seemed unusually quiet, with only the gentle breeze rustling through the leaves. The house looks even more sinister than usual, as if every brick and every window in it is telling the story of a past tragedy. They stood there, looking at the house that held so much sadness and fear, each trying to overcome their inner fears. Finally, Tyler took the first step. He walked to the front door of the house, took a deep breath, and knocked 3 times. Every knock echoed clearly in the silent night. After the knocking sound dissipated in the air, the surroundings were still silent, and there was no response. Tyler turned back to the others. Although he tried to stay calm, his nervousness could be heard in the slightly trembling voice. As Tyler returns, tension builds between Jason and his friends. Next, it was Chris' turn, and he walked toward the door, his arms trembling as he prepared to knock. At this moment, a sudden scream broke the silence of the night. It was Tyler who suddenly shouted, "There is a ghost." This sudden scream frightened everyone. The four of them quickly turned around and ran away. Running, my heart beats fast, as if it's about to jump out of my chest. They ran out of the streets of the house of evil and didn't stop until they saw the light, breathing heavily. Turning around, they found Tyler laughing, and it turned out it was just a prank. While the other three breathed a sigh of relief, Chris felt his courage was challenged. He proposed to go back again, but Mike firmly opposed it, thinking that the risk was enough and it was time to go home. However, as they were preparing to leave, Jason and Mike noticed something unusual. They looked in the direction of the evil spirit house, where there seemed to be a white figure swinging at the door, but when they stared again, the figure disappeared. This sight made Jason's heart sink, and he felt an unspeakable fear. When Jason looked back, he found Mike looking at him, as if asking, "Did you see it too?" Jason nodded slightly towards Mike, and the two of them said nothing after that. They both had a tacit understanding and went back without mentioning the matter and not daring to say it. For the rest of the night, the four of them tried to forget that horrific moment, but Jason couldn't calm down. After returning home, he tossed and turned in bed, and the swinging white figure couldn't get out of his mind. Until late at night, he finally fell asleep from exhaustion. That night, Jason had a very strange dream. He dreamed that he came to the evil house again, walked into the yard, and saw Tyler eating in the house. He tried to call Tyler, but he didn't seem to hear him. Then, a woman in a white dress came out of the house with a pale face. She invited Jason to join them for dinner. In the dream, Jason felt extremely hungry and was attracted by the aroma of the food. Just when he was about to take the plate handed over by the woman, he found that the plate was not food but filled with wriggling maggots and scorpions. Fear suddenly surged into his heart. Jason turned around and ran away in his dream, feeling someone chasing closely behind him. He ran hard until he felt a slap in the face, which finally woke him up from his dream. He sat up, gasping for air and covered in cold sweat. When he opened his eyes, he saw his father. "Get up and go to your grandma's house right now." This dream was too real, and Jason was still immersed in unprecedented fear. The aftermath of the nightmare continued, and the next morning, Jason learned the heartbreaking news. Tyler quietly ran away from home for unknown reasons last night and unfortunately encountered a fatal car accident. The news was like a bolt from the blue to Jason and his friends. They couldn't believe that just the night before they were having an adventure together and now Tyler was gone. The news caused a huge shock among them. Feeling guilty and terrified, Jason begins to wonder if their adventure has evoked some unfortunate force. His heart was filled with chaos and pain. The horrific dreams at night and the tragedy in reality were intertwined, making it difficult for him to calm down. Over the next few days, their parents decided to send their children to live with distant relatives in the hope that this would allow them to recover from this tragedy. Jason was sent to the home of his distant relatives, but even in the new environment, he still couldn't relax. At night, he was often awakened by nightmares, and the swaying white figure and the woman in the white dress in his dream appeared repeatedly in his dreams. A few weeks later, Jason and his friends got together again. They all seemed much more silent than before. The incident of that summer night seemed to have left a deep mark on everyone's heart. They began to exchange dreams with each other and were surprised to find that they both had similar nightmares about the evil house. In their dreams, they all felt the suffocating fear and an indescribable evil force. These shared experiences lead them to realize that the house might actually be haunted by some evil spirit. Although they all tried to analyze all this rationally, the fear and doubt deep in their hearts were difficult to dispel. They began to recall the events of that night, trying to find some clues or explanations, but no matter what, Tyler's death became an unavoidable reality for them. As time passed, the terrifying legend of the evil house left a deep imprint on Jason and his friends. Although they try to return to normal life, the house and the tragic story behind it become a memory they cannot forget. Whenever night falls, Jason always thinks of the swaying white figure and the appearance of the woman in the white dress in his dream. These images lingered in his mind like ghosts and could not be dispelled. Eventually, the evil spirit house was demolished due to urban planning. On the day of demolition, Jason and his friends stood and watched from a distance. As the house gradually collapsed, it seemed that those ominous memories were also reduced to ashes. But for them, that house left behind more than just fear and sadness, but a profound revelation about the fragility and impermanence of life. Many years have passed since this incident. Although the evil house no longer exists, its impact on Jason's heart can never be erased. Every time he returns home, he instinctively resists going to that area. But he would still dream back to that old street at night, dreaming that he was standing in front of the house that no longer existed, and that white figure was still swinging at the door, as if calling him. These dreams often remind him that there are some things that even time cannot completely heal. As adults came of age, Jason and his friends took different paths in life, but the shared experience between them was forever etched in their hearts. For Jason, the story of Evil House is not only a horror story about the supernatural, but also a lesson about youth, courage, and loss. Whenever he recalls that experience, he always deeply feels the fragility of life and the preciousness of emotions between people. In Jason's mind, the evil house is no longer just a place, but a permanent memory, a precious experience that made him deeply appreciate the coexistence of light and darkness in life. This experience taught him to cherish the people around him and every ordinary day more. And in those silent nights, when he looked up at the stars and his thoughts drifted back to that old street, he knew that those experiences had become an indispensable part of his life story.